Okay. I always do that and click on just in time for the Xbox logo. I hope it sounds cool as some sort of effect. Like, I go, my tiny, tiny delay. So you could see there, right? Like, if you did not know that this game is a remaster and a re engineering of a game that originally came out in 1994, I think? No, 99. Loved by Mana fans since its original release in 1999. Legend of Mana comes to Xbox as an HD remaster, 25 years after its original release. So yeah, bro, we're going to play this later. See, that guy played it on his original PS1. Let's watch this thing, and then we'll get into the game we actually came here to play. I'm just letting the people know. So here's some pictures. This is like a glowed up 3D version. Different destinies, different choices. The tale of three interwoven stories begins again. A full remake of Trials of Mana, originally released in 1995 and loved to this day by many Mana fans, finally makes its appearance on Xbox. Huzzah! I don't know. I mean, this is a beloved series. It may be absurdly Japanese, which to some gamers' tastes is adorable and super amazing, and to some gamers' preferences is actually tedious and boring. And I'm sort of right in the middle where like it really depends on so many variables. I like the British. I'm an Anglophile. I don't claim to know all things British, but I love me some from Mr. Bean to Eddie Izzard. If you have a British accent or speaking in an actual British dialect, which is more appropriate to say, I am very, very likely to become obsessed with you, especially if you do good stand-up comedy. So when it comes to like things Japanese, cultural Japanese stuff, I'm generally a fan. I love Japan. I love Japanese people. I love Japanese culture. I'm also aware that some of it is like way too specifically beyond the scope of my understanding. It's beyond my ken to grasp culturally, and then that might not appreciate correctly. Having disclaimed that, let's watch the trailer and see if this is one of the things. Wait, hold on. I gotta pause here and say something. One of the things that's a little challenging for me is just how stereotypically like over sexy the ladies are in the video games. I'm a man. I'm a cis straight man, and I respect and admire people of all orientations, and I respect everyone's boundaries. And I realize that not everyone's comfortable with everything. And one of the realities of our world is that, broadly speaking, it has been a cis straight man's world for the vast majority of human civilized history. Like the history of human civilization is the history of white, cis, straight patriarchy. There's no denying that. So, as someone who's understood this intellectually and disagrees with the patriarchy, has wanted to undermine it, understand it in order to take it apart, and to stand as an ally with all women in a non-sexualized fashion, while also claiming the right as a man, as a cisgendered man, who is an ally to the LGBTQI and to women's rights and to everything else. I'm an ally. And it's also like I'm an ally. I am in allyship with myself and respectful, genuine, authentic, passionate, loving, intimate, real. I guess, some call it the divine masculine. That word's a little that term is a little pretentious because everyone's divine, even the people who are total muckabouts and not doing it right. Divinity is everything. Full stop. So the other arguments are pointless. But I digress. We're turning this into a whole podcast episode instead of playing video games. Should have recorded a podcast episode this morning. Guess that's what's up with me. There's a lot of cringe for me because I grew up being trained to appreciate, admire, and respect the art form of artfully depicting eroticized, sexualized women from the exclusive perspective of the cisgendered male gaze, which using today's postmodern, post-feminism terminology, we should be able to understand is problematic. Whether you realized it or not, once you grasp what all of that means and that it's the product of oppression and a methodology of oppressing women, of keeping them in check, in line, only allowing them to perform certain performative behaviors and to only be certain ways, it's why we make art that way, so that we can then it's all sublimated, though. It's all subliminal psychological weirdness. And curiously, America's not alone in its hyper. There's some hypocrisy in the right wingers' aggressive anti-LGBTQI stance that the all LGBTQ people are trying to groom children into sexually inappropriate things, which is not inherently, automatically absolute truth. That's nonsense. No, pin on the corkboard. This is a thing from the podcast, and that's something we end up talking about here on this show too when I spiral out of control. No absolute statement is ever absolutely true. Find me an absolute statement that grammatically is absolutist in its construction, and I'll show you something that cannot be absolutely true, because we'll find exceptions to it all the time. And so that's the thing. People will be like, well, there's always exceptions to the rule. And like, but that's not what absolutist means. And the problem is, with anything chauvinistic, with anything sexist, with anything biased that way, with anything patriarchal, with anything ethno-nationalist, with anything like that, and the reason all these things come up is because they're very prominent discussion points in the podcast, which is prevalent on my mind on a day-to-day basis. They like, what's the thing from Star Wars? Only Siths deal in absolutes. Only bigots decree things in absolutist formats, you guys. Pin on the corkboard. I need to write that down. That's a really good one. I should have... Okay, new rule. Hold on, I gotta get this ready. I just violated my own rule. Okay, new rule. And I'm trying to actualize and implement this rule. When I'm live streaming and I suddenly go off on a rant that coulda, shoulda, woulda been better suited for a podcast, I need to grab my phone and audio record it, because then I can upload it as a podcast and transcribe it, which is what I'm doing now, while simultaneously narrating that idea, thought process to my nearly non-existent live stream audience. So I was in the midst of just sort of getting ready to talk about stuff. Getting ready to play a particular video game called Assassin's Creed Unity, set in France. And I opened up by first doing a little pregame chat lounge session where I discussed yesterday's derailment of my live stream show, where I set out to play Unity, but I opened each episode with a little... Well, I opened the first episode that I did, my first session when I went live to play Unity. I thought I would do a pregame chat lounge session where I would tackle a little procedural step in the fan fiction art making from a character, a screenshot of a character that's part of the game. And I ended up spending most of the day doing that, and or rambling and talking about stuff that shoulda, coulda, woulda been a small segment for a podcast episode or its own podcast episode. And that just happened to be now, so here we are. Let's come full circle. Forgive me for anyone watching the video that is live streamed. This will be a bit redundant.